So, as I was saying, I'm Melody, and I'm the Associate Admission Director. I've been here about 26 years now. I worked at the high school for a long time as a teacher in our expressive language program. I was an academic case manager advisor. I'll talk about who those folks are as we go through the presentation today. And I've been in the admission office since 2006. I also have two children, one of whom did a number of summer programs here, and the other one is a currently enrolled 7th grader at our elementary middle school campus. So I've been very involved with Landmark, not only professionally, but personally as well. So what we'll do today is talk, as Katie said, about a little bit about who we are, what we do, our profile of student that we support, our admission process, and then get into specifically talking about the programs at the high school and what our day-to-day looks like in terms of that. So I'm going to just give me a second here, if you can bear with me, to get the presentation up and running. I'm going to switch over to slides.
So hopefully Melody's presentation will take up the entirety of your screen, but if for some reason it's not, if you scroll to the middle of the screen, you'll see a pushpin icon, and that will make sure that it fills your screen.
Okay, and Katie, can you see the presentation? Does it look good and it's up?
It looks great. Okay,
perfect. So we're going to start by talking about who our students are at Landmark School. And the first few things I want to mention is that the students that come to Landmark are bright kids. They really are very motivated. They're bright. They're well-adjusted. They really want to be in an environment where they can learn. They're curious. They like to be involved in the class, but they've been in situations in the past possibly where that hasn't been an ideal environment for them to do those things, to really show their potential, how motivated they are, how capable they are. So when they get to Landmark, we see these traits really shine through. Our students really display a level of resiliency as well, in terms of the fact that even though they may have been in a previous learning environment that hasn't been ideal, they still want to do well in school, and they want to embrace the opportunity to be in a learning environment where they can do well. So they're very capable, bright kids. In terms of the learning profile of our students, I always tell parents that we work with a pretty narrow and very specific piece of the pie, so to speak, in terms of the students' learning profile. We refer to, at Landmark, to students having a language-based learning disability as kind of an umbrella term that can encompass a number of possible specific labels or diagnoses that you may have seen through either private neuropsych testing or public school psychoeducational evaluations. So we'll start kind of, I think, with the most obvious label or term that I'm sure everybody is aware of, which is dyslexia. About 70% of our students at Landmark High School are pretty classically dyslexic in terms of having a phonologically based reading disability. These students struggle with that phonemic awareness and to apply word attack and decoding skills, the encoding, spelling skills, the reading fluency, that all ties into writing. So another common, term or label that we'll see in evaluations is a disorder of written language. A lot of our students have incredible ideas and are very creative, but their ability to organize and get their thoughts down on paper in a clear, concise way is a difficulty for them. They really benefit from structure and template usage, and I'll be talking about all of that. And there's another group of students at Landmark, typically anywhere between 80 to 100 of our 300 students that we typically have at our high school campus that may demonstrate an expressive language disorder and have some language processing issues. That retrieval and output may be a struggle for them for both oral expression and written expression. And the executive function piece it's a very commonly used buzzword these days. Everybody struggles with executive function. For our students at Landmark, we see that most of them display difficulties with that ability to have effective time management skills, be able to sit down and initiate tasks for their homework, be able to kind of shift sets from one thing to another, having good study skill techniques in place. So that executive function piece is kind of pretty much throughout our entire population at Landmark, and we do support that very well. And then the other area where we see our students under that language-based umbrella often struggling is with the working memory and or processing speed. Again, that working memory being, the amount of information a student can hold on to at once that they then have to do something with. And the processing speed really applies to that motoric, how quickly they can output. So that's where we'll see some areas of need for our students that attend Landmark School. And that's all in the face of them being, bright, capable students. So when we talk about that piece about, being really bright and capable, we're talking about the cognitive ability. One of the important measures that we look at when a family applies to Landmark School is the WISC. The WISC stands for the Westler Intelligence Scale for Children. Again, it's hopefully something that a lot of you have heard of and about through the testing that's been done with your student. And if it's a student that's 16 or older, they may have had the WACE, which is just the adult version of the WISC. So what we're looking at here for the Landmark student is that they demonstrate areas of strength regarding their verbal comprehension. That's understanding of basic language coming in, that receptive language piece. And then the fluid reasoning and visual spatial integration really needs to be a main area of strength for our students to access curriculum and make effective progress. When we talk about fluid reasoning, we're talking about that big picture thinking, that problem solving ability. And when we talk about the visual spatial integration, we're talking about kind of, if you think about the architect, and when you're removing language, that ability to see how the pieces go together to make a whole. And we're very visually based in the way we teach here at Landmark, and so we really need for the students to have those strengths with that visual, spatial, and fluid reasoning. And again, where we often see the discrepancy is with that working memory under processing speed. So that would commonly be an area of difficulty, and we would see a split in some scores on the WISC with their working memory under processing speed not being commensurate to the stronger comprehension, reasoning, and integration. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. The other pieces of information we need when families apply, we look for academic achievement testing. Those are measures of, reading, writing, and math. We also ask for some measure of what we refer to as psychosocial adjustment, which would be rating scales looking at something like the BASC or the Child Behavior Checklist. Again, those measures look at how a student is doing in terms of their social skills, their attention, anxiety levels, things like that. So that's an important piece for us to get as well, because Landmark, is not a therapeutic program. We certainly have students that come to us with some lowered self-esteem and frustration around school, but if a student is struggling more with primary social emotional needs, we would not be the best program to support them appropriately. So those are our students in a nutshell. And again, with the application process, we'll collect testing, we'll collect references, we'll collect school reports, copy of IEP or 504 if there is one. We don't have an application deadline. We work on a rolling basis, and we will keep in touch with you through email throughout the application process as that unfolds. So any more specific questions about the application process to Landmark, feel free to reach out to our office at any point. Okay, so we're going to start to talk now about what's unique about Landmark, about our high school, what makes for a good language-based program. And one of the most important first topics to talk about is the daily one-to-one tutorial. This is really the hallmark of who we are and what we do here. We were founded in 1971. We're in our 50th year. And this has been part of our programming since the beginning. The one-to-one tutorial happens for 50 minutes every day, just like the other classes that are 50 minutes a day. The day runs from 7:50 in the morning until 3:15 in the afternoon. It's the same set schedule every day. And the tutorial is completely individualized to remediate language and literacy skills. It's an individualized curriculum designed from a diagnostic of goals. And we have a couple different types of one-to-one tutorials that can be assigned to your student depending upon their level of need around the literacy skills. So this is not a tutorial to get extra homework help in history or science. It's different from what, academic support would look like at a public school. This is its own class with its own curriculum, and no two tutorials look exactly the same. We have some students, probably about 90 or so, in our early literacy tutorial utilizing the LIPS program specifically. So if a lot of folks have heard about like OG, Orton Gillingham, or Wilson, Linda Mood Bell LIPS, or Seeing Stars, these are all phonetic-based approaches towards building word attack, building the phonemic awareness for decoding and fluency and encoding. So for students that come to Landmark with real gaps in basic literacy skills, they would have an early literacy tutorial utilizing a lot of the LIPS and Seeing Stars. We bring in some elements of Wilson, some Read Naturally. If a student comes to Landmark and has some basic, their basic decoding is pretty intact and they're working on some higher level fluency and writing skills, then they would be in a more traditional tutorial utilizing an array of materials for that tutorial. So that's a really unique feature to Landmark, that everybody has that one-to-one, minus a few that I'll talk about when we get to some of the different programming. There's a small subset of students that don't, because they don't need the tutorial, but we'll get there. Another thing that's really unique about Landmark School, and again, that makes for a good language-based program, is that we have really small class sizes, average 6 to 8 students. We do not go beyond 8 students. We are an approved program by the state of Massachusetts. And about half of our students are funded by local districts. So we cannot go beyond 8. Sometimes our classes are as small as 4. Another thing that we look to do is to place students based on their ability level in classes. So oftentimes we have families when they're going through the admission process that will inquire and ask, is our 10th grade sophomore class or is our junior class full? And that's not how we admit students to Landmark. We admit students until we're full as a school, or until all of the tutorial teaching periods are full, because we're again grouping students, looking at things like working memory, processing, levels of literacy, expressive language needs, and that's how we group them. We're not taking our 18-year-old seniors and putting them with our 14-year-old freshmen, but grade up, grade down. We really want to make sure that, for example, the 6 or 7 students in a language arts class are all moving at the same pace. It doesn't make sense to have someone who's struggling with basic sentence and paragraph structure and put them with other students who are writing multi-paragraph or multi-page essays. So that's really important. We do follow the Mass Curriculum frameworks. We parallel that. So students are taking typical content classes such as biology and chemistry and US and world history, algebra, geometry. It's just that the delivery of instruction is quite different at Landmark, where the instruction's happening, the content is being delivered in the classroom primarily. And less of, a teacher assigning a bunch of pages for the student to read and learn on their own outside of school. It's very multisensory in the classroom. And all of our classes are taught by teachers who already either have their master's in special education or are currently working towards getting that degree through the Department of Education, and they're being supervised while that's happening. So about 70% of our faculty already have that certification in special education. In terms of our approach, again, we're language-based, so that means that we're skill-based. We want students to develop skills through direct and explicit instruction. We want them to learn the content through study skills. And we want the information and the way they learn the information to be done consistently across curriculum, and to not have teachers all teaching different ways of doing things. We want them to be able to internalize the skills so that they can then apply those skills independently. And I'll talk more about that when we talk more about study skills. So we do have 3 distinct programs at Landmark High School. When you're applying to Landmark, you just apply to the high school as a whole, and then we will make decisions and determine what program is going to be the right fit for a student based on not only the independent testing we receive, but also through a screening battery that we administer that really, again, helps us to determine program placement, tutorial placement, what level language arts class, all of those types of things. So the largest majority of students enrolled at Landmark High School are placed in our Founders Program. That is our traditional program. And within the Founders Program, students are taking, as you can see, a math, science, social studies, English language arts. They have the one-to-one tutorial. Again, that can be either a traditional Founders tutorial or it can be an early literacy LIPS tutorial if they need that. And then there's a 6th academic in the day that we will determine, again, based on the testing and the screening that we do. Is this a student that's significantly behind in their basic literacy skills and therefore they require an extra small group reading fluency class? If that's not the case, maybe they need a study skills class or a literature class. So we will determine that. And of course, for the students tuning in today, there is an elective during the day. You get a chance to, have a break from your academics and take something fun that you enjoy doing. And I will talk all about those later on with the slides, but I'm just trying to get through the academic stuff for right now. The second program that we offer at the high school is our expressive language program. We typically have 80 or so students in this program. As you can see from the list of classes, it looks pretty identical to the students in the Founders Program. Math, science, social studies, English language arts, and the one-to-one tutorial is all pretty much the same. The one main difference for these students is that 6th academic class, instead of it being study skills or literature, it's a specific class that we call oral expression. And the reason the students in the expressive language program take this class is because they struggle with that word retrieval and output for oral language, that ability to express themselves in a clear, concise way, to elaborate on what they want to say. They need to develop language skills around understanding multiple meanings and figurative language and synonym, antonym, vocabulary development. So they will have an oral expression class in their schedule as their 6th academic. There's also a bit more structure in their ELA language arts class for grammar and written composition with the template usage for these students as well. The third program that we have at our high school is referred to as our prep program. And I do want to just be clear that Landmark High School is a college preparatory high school as a whole. As I mentioned at the beginning, all of our students are really bright. They are college bound. So what program a student is placed in really has nothing to do with their cognitive ability and how bright they are. It just has to do with the skill sets that they have or they don't have in place when they come to us. So for the students in the prep program, this is mirrored a bit more after a traditional private prep school, but still with all of the Landmark multisensory teaching methodology and the focus on skills and executive function. The students in our prep are students who are reading at grade level. They either do not have a classic dyslexia diagnosis or they've been remediated to the point where they no longer require a one-to-one tutorial to work on those literacy skills. So these are our only students at Landmark, and there's typically between 40 to 50 students each year that fit into this program, into this category, where the focus is really the higher level essay and research writing skills and the executive function study skills and some higher level reading comprehension strategies. They take math and science and social studies. Their ELA class is referred to as grammar and composition, and then they will have a literature class and a study skills class in their day. As you can see, again, these are the only students that don't get that one-to-one. Because they don't need it. They don't need to work on decoding and reading fluency and encoding spelling skills anymore. And they also have to have a good understanding of basic paragraph structure and be able to put together, a 2 to 3 paragraph essay at this level. We do have a number of students every year that do a combination of programming. They might be taking 1 or 2 classes in the prep. We have students that will transition. Maybe they start out with us in the founders program, and then they transition after a couple of years into the prep because they're ready to do that. So there's a lot of fluidity within the programs. We always want to individualize for the students. We want to push them along and challenge them in the areas where they excel, but we also want to meet them at the level where they need the continued remediation as well. And the last thing I want to mention quickly is that the prep program is the only part of Landmark High School that is not approved by the state in terms of trying to get funding. So if you are pursuing funding from your district, you can't be placed in the prep program. Study skills is a really important part of what we do here. It's another unique feature at Landmark is that it's embedded across curriculum in a very deliberate and consistent way. We are helping to support students to learn how to take good 2-column notes by previewing relevant information in their text. We're helping to support them to preview relevant vocabulary, paraphrase, working on all of those great test-taking strategies, and using very specific structured templates to support that 5-step writing process, whether they're writing a paper in LA class or history class. What does the process look like to go from a brainstorm to an outline to a rough draft to an edit to a final draft? And that's really important. So again, teachers emphasizing these skills and teaching content, but doing it through this study skills approach. Another unique feature about our program is that every student here has somebody called an academic advisor. The academic advisor is different from a guidance counselor. We have those too, and I'll talk about that. But the academic advisor is the person who oversees the student's academic programming and their schedule. They work very closely with the one-to-one tutorial teacher to develop that diagnostic of goals and kind of supervise that tutorial and go in regularly to observe the progress that's being made and adjust the goals as needed. For any students in their caseload, and they typically have about 18 students in their caseload, they would be writing the IEP for those students who are funded. And it's the main contact person for the student and the parents. So to get those updates, how your student is doing in class, the progress they're making, if there are any concerns that pop up, they reach out to you right away. For the student to go to their advisor if, again, they have any questions about a class that they've been placed in, if they feel like, after a month of being here that they're in a class that's too easy or too hard, anything like that. And they get to know their academic advisor really well because that person stays with them during their years at Landmark, and they develop a nice relationship with that person. And then the guidance and transition, which I talked about. I mean, we are, like I said, a full-fledged preparatory high school. Students are getting the full high school experience here. And the transition planning really starts as early as 9th grade with doing interest inventories and getting the kids to really start thinking about, who they are as a learner, what their passions are that they might want to pursue. By junior year, they are having weekly one-to-one meetings with their guidance counselor throughout the year. It's highly personalized support through the whole process of, once they've identified what they might want to do and what schools they might be interested in applying to, requesting applications and, helping students write their essays and get letters of recommendation. 100% of the students that apply, which is almost all of our students get accepted. Typically 94 to 96% attend. We do have some students every year that might decide to do a gap year, or maybe they're pursuing a trade, going into a specific trade school or military, but most of our students are college bound. The homework that happens at Landmark happens every night, but it is something that's really manageable for our students. We want homework to be a direct practice and review of the skills and content that have been introduced in class already. It's fresh in their minds. We want the students to be able to go and practice those skills to make sure that they understood what they need to do, and that they got the concepts, and that they are ready to move on to the next thing. So the students, get usually about an hour and a half of homework a night as underclassmen, 9th, 10th grade. By upperclassmen, years 11th, 12th grade, it might ramp up a little bit to 2 to 3 hours a night. But they're doing assignments that they really can do on their own, and feel independent and successful with the assignments, and not need support, not need a lot of support with that. They can do it independently. Okay, so that's our academic day and the academic classes. And what I want to do now is start to talk about after school, what happens here in terms of, for both day students and with our residential curriculum, all of the afternoon activities. Obviously, with the pandemic happening, things have been different since March. And for this year, our residential boarding program has been on pause. We're certainly hoping to have that up and running sooner than later, and for next 21-22 school year. Our summer program at this time is slated to just be an academic day program, but we'll certainly keep in touch with families if that changes. But I want to talk about after school here, because again, we want to emphasize to the students tuning in that you have every opportunity here to be involved in so many extracurriculars at Landmark, probably more so than what public schools offer. And in terms of students that commute as day students, which is, we're about 60% day and about 40% boarding. The day students can be on campus, and we encourage that. And I'd say like 95% of them stay after school for activities, and oftentimes even stay through supper, and go home later at night. And that's absolutely fine. For the students that live here, we work on a level system. It's level 1 to 6, 6 being the highest. All new students that come to Landmark, regardless of what grade they're entering, as will start at level 1. There is more structure at level 1. And the goal is to support effective time management and organizational skills, and to really build the self-advocacy piece and the healthy decision-making and problem-solving as they move through their high school adolescent years. So at level 1, again, more structure, more reminders to support the time management for the student to know that they need to be out on time in the morning at a certain time, that they need their lights out at night at a certain time, that they're sitting at their desks in their room with the door open during structured study hall at night. And again, every few weeks, as they're meeting these day-to-day expectations, students can gain privileges and move up those levels. And I'll give the example of, typically by Thanksgiving break, a new student that's been taking care of business and getting their homework done and is responsible with being on time, they could be up to level 4 or 5 already. And by level 4 or 5, they can have, level 5, I should say, they can have a fridge and TV in their room. They can have food delivered. They have, they can shut their door during study hall and be on their bed. They check themselves out in the morning. They can have a car on campus if they're an upperclassman. So, and level 6 is kind of ultimate freedom, where they get to structure their time kind of the way they want to, and is a lot more independence. But there's also the expectation of being a very positive community member, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that, including having to do a certain amount of community service hours. So that structure is in place from, they go to their afternoon activity, they have dinner, There's an hour of free time for them to get to hang out with friends on campus. They have structured study hall from 8 to 9:30 at night. And then when study hall ends, they have to stay in their dorm or their house until their lights out, but they have some more downtime to hang out in the lounge or their room until that light's out. And that structure is in place from Sunday through Thursday, and then starting Friday, weekend trips, activities. And we're in a great location. We're 30 minutes north of Boston. We're right on the ocean. We're near local mountains for the winter months for skiing and snowboarding. There's so much to do here. Once we're able to get back to some sense of normalcy in this world and do that, of course. So I want to start to talk about pursuing passions at Landmark and some of those electives that are available during the school day and the afternoon activities. We have an amazing visual arts department with all kinds of 2D, 3D media art, drawing, painting, printmaking, ceramics, photography. These, again, are elective options during the school day, and they are also afternoon activity options once the school day is over if a student is not doing a sport. We have a great performing arts department with chorus and dance and drama and theater tech. We have kids taking music lessons after school. So our athletic program, which is after school, is incredible. We have 3 seasons of JV and varsity sports. We compete with other private schools in our league. In the fall, we have soccer and cross country and girls volleyball and golf. In the winter, we have indoor track, we have wrestling and swim team and basketball. And in the spring, we have outdoor track and field, we have sailing, we have lacrosse and tennis and baseball and softball. So there's a lot of opportunity for the kids to get involved with sports here at Landmark. We have a working auto shop on campus where kids be taking auto mechanics, again, as an elective or after school. We have woodworking shop where they can do woodworking and boat building. We have a great Steamworks lab with all kinds of technology and programming and robotics and all kinds of things for them to pursue there, animation. And so that there's a lot to choose from there. And then we also have our PE department where we have the typical gym class. We have weightlifting and basketball class and yoga class. So there's quite a bit to choose from. And I mentioned community service before and how that ties into our residential curriculum. Our students typically log in over 5,000 hours of community service a year. There are so many opportunities for local community service, options, as well as service trips out of state and to other countries in the past to volunteer. So that's, a very active part of student life on campus is the community service. So that wraps it up about our academic year program. And so I'd like to take a little time just to talk about our wonderful summer program at Landmark. We usually have around 50 or so students that join us for the summer, so it's much smaller than the 300 for the school year. But the students that come for summer, there's a mix. So we either have students who are maybe doing okay where they are at their other, public or private school, but could really use a boost in study skills or essay writing skills to bring back with them. And that's about 2/3 of the students that come for the summer. And they will not be attending Landmark for the school year. The other 1/3 of students that attend for summer are students that will be joining us for the school year. And they're using the summer program as a way to transition in. It's a great way to make some friends ahead of time with other students who will also be returning. They get to know their academic advisor ahead of time because usually whoever the advisor is for the summer program sticks with them for the school year. If a student, and this, may not be the case for the summer if we only end up having a day program, but typically if a student is boarding for the first time and living away for the school year, the summer program, if they're boarding for the summer, is a great way to transition in as well and kind of get used to that. So For the summer program, we have students entering grades 8 through 12. That's a little different from the school year where it's students for grades 9 through 12. We do have the students entering 8th grade joining us at the high school program for the summer. And the way the day will look is that they'll have 4 classes from morning until lunchtime. They have their one-to-one tutorial. Every student has that over the summer. They have an English language arts class to focus on grammar and written composition. They have a math class, and then they'll have either a study skills class or an extra reading fluency class. Again, we will decide that based on a student's profile and level of need. After lunch, excuse me, there's a study hall for them to get their homework done. That happens in the afternoon for the summer program, excuse me, which is different than the evening time for the school year. There is some homework over the summer, but it's a lot less than the school year. And then in terms of the activities, which we'll have to see if we end up having activities for this summer 2021 or not. Again, it will depend on where we are with the pandemic, but typically our summer program incorporates the option for students to participate in some great activities in the afternoon. We have a sea kayaking and paddleboarding option. We have our marine science program. We have students doing visual arts, students doing photography, and then there's also a fitness and spinning option. A lot of the student athletes like to participate in that and get some preseason, training in. So those activities would happen after school, after 2:30, and go until dinner time for the students that live here over the summer. And that's the larger majority. After dinner, there's a theme each night with activities. They might have field games at the upper field or a pizza movie night. There are great weekend trips that we offer over the summer. If a student is a day student for the summer program, they can come for just the academic piece, or they can stay and do an extended day with activities as well. And so again, the goal for the summer is to give students tools that they can use and take back with them for the school year, or start, get a jump start and start to implement some of those strategies that we're teaching them over the summer if they're coming back with us in the fall. And that's our summer program, and it's a really fantastic program. So that's my piece. I'm going to get out of present mode so that we can shift a little bit now. I think I'm about 5 minutes early. I went through that so quickly today.
Well done, Mel.
I know. I usually don't finish up until 9:30. I don't know if we have administrators. I think we have a couple administrators with us already, so they can start to jump in. But please start peppering us with questions, anything that you feel like I left out of the presentation that you have questions about. So Katie, you can transition now to introducing some of our administrators.
Perfect. So we have about 15 minutes before the students join, but in the meantime, we'll chat with some of our administrators, and again, use that chat bar feature for any questions. Alternatively, if you'd like to vocalize your question, you can just write the word question or question mark in the chat, and then we'll give you the floor. But I'll start with our headmaster, Bob Bruto.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Mel, for your wonderful presentation. Good morning, everyone. So nice to meet you, albeit virtually. And we at Landmark are having a year like no other, as you can imagine, given the virus, but we're in the end of week 12 on campus. And I have to say, when the kids rolled up the hill the first week, not knowing if we were going to have school or not, and we did, and they jumped out of their cars with such excitement and enthusiasm, it really is the reason we're all here. These kids love being here. There's a family of professionals working with these kids. And in full disclosure, I have been with Landmark since the day we opened our doors in September of 1971, when we had 40 kids, and I've been head for 30 years. And part of that is because my belief in this system, this mission, and what's happening for the kids who come here and how their lives get changed is very, very powerful. So we have quite a number of people who've been here a long time. And we really lean on a medical model of diagnostic, prescriptive, individualized, customized education. So when we have a full population of students, no two students have the same program. It's designed for what they need in that tutorial. It's not a Wilson reading program. It's not a Lindenwood Bell reading program. It's not anything Orton Gillingham. It's bringing together what every student needs and grouping kids in skills classes based on where their skill levels are, and then really focusing on their social emotional development, teaching kids to be independent, teaching kids to be self-advocates. So when you see the growth in these kids and you see the evolution, it's a difficult place to ever think about walking away from, because it's just very powerful. So I'm here to answer any questions. And after this meeting, if you have questions and would like to call me, call anybody in the community, I'd be happy to talk to you directly. So with that, I'll pass it back to Katie.
Thank you for being here, Bob. Bill Barrett, would you like to say hello, head of our high school?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. As Katie mentioned, my name is Bill Barrett. This is my 6th year as the head of the high school. I was not at Landmark in 1971. However, I have been here for 25 years. My wife, Christine, is a department head at the high school campus as well. So it's truly a family operation within the Barrett family. And one of our sons, we have 3 sons, one of them attended Landmark's elementary middle school campus for 2 years and is now a freshman in college. So I think and like Katie said, we welcome your questions. And as I answer them, it's obviously through the professional lens, but I think it's also through the very personal lens of being a Landmark parent. And whether you're a Landmark parent for 1 year or 8 years, you're always a Landmark parent in that sense. So thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing your questions. And exploring opportunities at our school. As Bob said, we're finishing our 12th week at the high school of in-person learning. We're accommodating day students. We are accommodating hybrid students, so students that have long commutes that can only make it to campus 2 to 3 days a week. And then we have about 40 fully remote students. So it's a year like no other, and I'm sure you've heard that expression at other schools too. But we're quite proud of what our students are doing, what our families are doing, and certainly what our faculty is doing in terms of accommodating all of our learners, whether they're in person or remote. It's been amazing. So again, thanks for being here, and I'll pass it back to Katie.
Thanks, Bill. Rob Gianatelli, our Dean of Students, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. As Katie said, my name is Rob Gianatelli. In my 25th year here at Landmark School as the Dean of Students. I live on campus, raised my children here on campus. My oldest taught here for 5 years and has pushed on this year to enter his doctoral program. And my youngest is now a senior at Bryant University. So it is a great and wonderful community to live and go to school and work in. Happy to be here, happy to answer any of your questions about the residential program or student life in general. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, everyone. I think we might have a few more joining momentarily. But in the meantime, before we move on to the students, I also wanted to say welcome Libby Parker, our Director of Admissions. Libby, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed Melody's presentation. She is so knowledgeable about our program. And I know she explained the admission process a little bit, but we just want you all to know that we will usher you through a process that will be thoughtful and transparent. And we will absolutely be forthcoming with whether or not we can support your child's profile, and look forward to seeing some applications come in and working with you, regardless of whether we're in person or remote. So again, welcome, and we look forward to getting to know you guys and your kids.
Great. So what questions do you guys have, particularly before the students join? So from the academic perspective, the residential life, here we go. Good job coming in. Thank you, Kat, for the first question. Ariel Martin-Cohn just joined, so we'll be sure to say a quick hello to her, and then we'll get to Kat's question. Ariel?
Good morning. Do you want a quick introduction? I'm sorry,
Yes,
I'm jumping in at the end. All right, so I'm Ariel Martin-Cohn. I'm the Assistant Academic Dean. I can answer lots of academic questions, but I also do MCAS testing, coordination, and organization. and I'm the director of the summer program, if either of those things are relevant or important to you or your child.
Great. Libby, do you want to address that? Thank you, Ariel. Libby, do you want to address that first question that came in?
Sure, Kat, a really good question, because when you're a parent looking at test scores, it's a jumble sometimes. What we do is not just look at overall scores. We do look into the individual subtest scores. So what I'm going to offer to do, nothing's a disqualifying factor, because it could have other reasons that there's strength in comprehension. And the comprehension on the WISC is not reading comprehension. So what we'll do is we'll look at your son or daughter's evaluation and give you a call. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great. Ariel, this is a good question for you to answer. Is there a designated block each day for time management / tutoring?
Yes. So students in our expressive language and founders program have a daily 50-minute one-on-one tutorial. That's very much the cornerstone of our program. So for some students who have our early literacy tutorials, they're getting our most direct and intensive remediation for their phonemic awareness and decoding and fluency skills. And then students who might have been here with a couple of years, 11th, 12th grade, their reading skills are somewhat more intact. They may be spending proportionally more time on time management, executive function, organization within the individualized curriculum of tutorial. So it's not a study hall. It has its own deeply individualized diagnostic curriculum based on student performance and areas of need. But certainly time management and organization plays a role in those tutorials. And then students in the prep program who do not have the one-on-one tutorial, they have a study skills class that's curriculum-based, content-driven, but provides a lot of rehearsal in time management, materials, and information organization as well.
Katie, can I just jump in here and also talk about and promote the concept of the residential curriculum inside the residential base predicates on 3 kind of soft skill developments: time management, organization, and effective self-advocacy. And the level system inside the residential curriculum stresses and promotes those skill developments through a series of check-in and both time management check-ins, organizational check-ins through room cleanup, and then advocacy through the need to be demonstrating your advocacy skills as they move up the level system. Respectfully, we try to knock mom and dads out of the picture a bit as they move through the residential curriculum, ideally getting them ready to support their platform out of Landmark School into college, military, the world of work, where we all know that you shouldn't be at that point in time continuing to advocate for your children. They need to kind of develop those skills on their own. So we incorporate those thought process or that skill development very tightly inside the residential base as well.
Thank you, Rob. This is a great question about how we determine the program and then how they can move and change. So maybe, Mel, if you want to talk about how Landmark makes the initial determination, and then we'll turn it over to Ariel to explain how students can seamlessly move through.
Sure. So as I had mentioned, as I was going through the slides, as you are applying and we are collecting the records, we're collecting either private neuropsych eval or public school psychoed testing. We're looking at all of that information. We're looking at school reports, IEPs, all the feedback that's provided on those documents. And then when we have a completed application and we've gone through our review process and we've followed up with folks and we've determined that we feel like we're likely to be a good fit, we will then schedule your son or daughter for a screening and interview process. And the Landmark screening that we do, it's a few measures of reading and an informal writing sample, some measures of memory and integration, a few different things that we look at. And based on all of that information, that helps us to figure out what program would be the right fit as a starting point. Is this a student that has some speech and language testing that identifies expressive language needs? Therefore, they should be in our expressive language program and have that oral expression class that I had talked about. Is this a student who maybe isn't classically dyslexic, but has the difficulties with organization for written expression and the executive function needs and difficulty with some, memory under processing, but they're reading at grade level. So it seems like the prep program might be a good fit, or are they best suited for the founders? So we make those decisions. We also, if they do need the tutorial, again, we're looking at, do they need more of the traditional tutorial because they have their basic phonemic awareness is in place and they have some decent word attack skills, but they need to focus more on higher level reading, writing, or is it a student who needs an early literacy tutorial because that phonemic piece is not up to par yet of where it should be. So those are the things that we look at, and all of those things help us to figure out when a student enters Landmark, what program they will enter into and what kind of tutorial they need. And then there's movement from there as they gain skills and make progress during their time at Landmark. And that's what the academic advisors pay attention to. They're going in to observe in the tutorial and department heads in terms of other classes. And Ariel can talk a bit more about that. But there is movement once a student is here as they gain skills and make progress to kind of, move along.
Sure. So any programmatic moves, whether it's from expressive language to founders to prep, or just from within departments. So we have a reading department and a study skills department. And some students will start with us in the reading fluency classes. And then maybe the next year they're in reading literature because they're focusing more on comprehension. And then maybe their junior year, they're in study skills because that's the specific skill they need support in. And then senior year, maybe they're taking a film and literature class to bolster their comprehension and analysis skills. So there's moves curriculum-wise. And then the programmatic moves are made by the academic advisor input, yearly academic testing, and oversight by the program directors. So we have an expressive language program that's directed by a person named Katie Warden. The early literacy tutorials have a department head who oversees all of those tutorials and guides progress and decides when a student moves from early literacy to founders. And then there's an entire admin team that's working to oversee student progress academically, like testing on paper, but also emotionally. Are they looking for more increased pace, volume, complexity? Do they want a certain kind of post-high school experience that we need to help prepare them for? How much support do they need? How much processing time? So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And then you, the parents, are very much involved in those decisions and discussions as well.
I just want to add to that, keep in mind that students within those three programs are still very much involved with each other. So the elective classes, science and math classes, so students, it's not like once they're in a program, they're isolated with the set group of students. They're certainly engaged with the full campus community regardless of the program. And sometimes students aren't even aware of which program they're in. So there's a lot of fluidity to how we've structured.
Katie, I think it also is important to say that Landmark is a school that wants kids to move on and flourish in their in a less restrictive environment as well. So it's very common sometimes to have a student come to Landmark for 2 years and then go back to their high school. Sometimes families start at their high school and get to sophomore year and say, this is a disaster, let's come to Landmark. So there's always a lot of conversation about progress being made within Landmark and for when parents are asking are they ready to fly? Are they ready to move on? We've wholeheartedly encourage that as well.
Absolutely. Katie, just a comment as well. Even though we're a remedial school, for all the reasons that we're talking about, we want students to have a traditional school experience. So kids competing in the Eastern Independent League in sports with Concord Academy and Beaver Country Day and Berwick and Portsmouth Abbey, performing arts, community service and thousands of hours, as Mel pointed out, boat building, auto mechanics, whatever it might be. We want kids to know they're in a traditional high school structure, but they're in a remedial program based on their needs. So that's a really important piece for us. Because so much comes out of that in terms of kids' confidence and strengths and socialization and all the rest. But also I just want to accent the role of the academic advisors. You want to touch upon that one more time, Ariel, in terms of what their role is with each student?
Of course. And there's a couple, or there's just another question about foreign language, which I can talk about. So the academic advisor model is really crucial, and the advisor is really your point person. The advisor is like your entry point to Landmark. So they oversee the tutorial. They make sure that the classes are scheduled appropriately. And then they're like the guiding hand, the coach, the support system for your kid on campus. And that's a really important part of making sure that our students feel seen and understood and welcomed, and also pushed and encouraged to feel a little bit of discomfort and asked to be more independent and to use more effective coping strategies. And then the deans, myself, Rob, Andrea Mead, Jeff Fossey, Bill, we come in to support those folks, the advisors, and work with kids as they need additional support. But the advisor is really that person is your Landmark entry point. And we find that to be a really successful way to help kids and families get good, solid, consistent communication. Can I answer the foreign language question quickly, because my mute's already off? So we don't offer foreign language classes. We do offer ASL because our students have found that they really enjoy the tactile nature of that language. There's a whole different grammatical structure. There's lots of vocabulary. It's definitely a language unto itself. But we find that our kids, because of their language-based learning disabilities, struggle so greatly with decoding and mastering the language of English that we don't want to add additional languages to it. And most of our students qualify for an exemption from foreign language if they're applying to colleges. So we don't find that it's a barrier for post-high school success for them. So that's kind of our approach, that it's not in our curriculum, it's not a barrier for our students as they move on from us, but that some find that ASL is a really nice elective for them.
Rob, do you want to speak to the question about the split for residential students?
Sure. Like in a traditional year, we have roughly 315 or so students on campus, and ideally the residential capacity is 157. So in the ideal space, we're usually about a 50-50 split residential to commuting students, and that varies year to year depending upon trends in enrollment management and all those pieces in it. But we're pretty solidly an even split program. If that's the 60-40 question. If the 40-60 question is female to male residents, there are 91 male resident to capacity and 66 female residents to capacity. So that's a different level of the split. But overall in the school, we tend to be pretty kind of consistent in the data residential numbers. So I'm not sure exactly what the 60-40 question was.
Rob, I think I had mentioned before, I'm sorry, I'll just jump in. As I was going through the presentation, I had mentioned that the last couple of years we've been about 60% day and about 40% boarding. So that might have been what that was related to.
That has not been my history here. It's been, I'm just seeing a different trend, but my history here is a more even split.
I'm going to transition because we've got some students who have joined. Thank you guys. So this is their milk break period. So it's the break right after their first 2 classes. So it's really sweet that they're giving that up to be with you. And again, these guys are a wealth of knowledge and are super candid. So pepper them with good questions. First, I'll have Eric introduce himself. Eric, can you say hello?
Hello, I'm Eric. I am currently a junior. I came to Landmark sophomore year. I was a resident. Now I am currently online schooling. I played soccer and basketball. And this spring and winter, I don't think we're having any sports, so sadly I can't participate in those. I'm also a member of student council this year for the first time. And yeah.
Great, Eric. And Eric came to us from Vermont. Thanks, Eric, for being here. And he came from a public school, right? Freshman year, you were in public school and then transitioned. Awesome. Okay. Dominic, can you say hello?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dominic. I'm a senior here. This is my 5th year. I did the 8th grade program when it was available. I do cross country and track, and I do portfolio. I do photography and design.
Can you explain what portfolio is, Dominic?
Sure. So portfolio is a senior class that you take. It's one of the hardest art classes that you could take, and it prepares you for college. If you want to pursue art as your dream, they help you choose and also creates a portfolio so you could give to colleges and prepare you what is college like when you take art.
Thanks, Dominic. And Dominic, you were a resident and you've been a day student.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. And Dominic is currently on campus.
Yes.
Are you outside the art building?
I'm near the Dudley Green area.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, families, what questions do you have for the students? We might have a few more pop on in a moment. Oh, we've got one more. I'll have Allie introduce herself. Allie, can you tell us where you're from, what year you are, and what you have been involved in at Landmark? I think you're muted, Allie. Sorry. So while Allie works through her volume, feel free to put in questions in the chat for students.
Dominic, as a senior, what are you thinking about for next year?
So since senior year is coming to end, I'm thinking to pursue photography or graphic design in college. And I'm also thinking doing cross country and track as well in college as well.
Great. Exciting.
Indeed.
We'll miss you.
Yes, I'll miss this place as well. All you too.
All right, some good questions coming in. Let's see. Best part of Landmark and the part of Landmark you least enjoy. Eric, we'll start with you.
Least enjoy. Well, let's start with the best part. I loved living in the dorms. I thought that was amazing. You have my friends around you all the time. You also have a level system, which you might, some days you're gonna hate it and other days you're gonna love it. But it really does help you like keep your room neat, and then you learn a lot about like creating a good environment for yourself. You make a lot of friends. My least favorite part about Landmark. This is tough. I would say my least favorite part about Landmark is probably we have a lot of really good sports teams, but some of our sports teams aren't like the very best, and those tend to be like our soccer team, which I was on. Even though our girls did amazingly, but our guys weren't too great. So that kind of, it was still fun to be able to play, and like I played well and we all played well, but like it's kind of a shame that we didn't have like more wins at the end of the season. And same kind of for like the boys basketball team. So I like to I'm a competitive person, so.
Fair enough. I like that. Dominic, favorite and least favorite?
First one is the support that a lot of students get. As an athlete and an artist, I want to have great support also in the academic, but also in the sport field. Teachers really love giving their time to you. And if you have problems or need anything, they are always there for you. The only thing that you need to do is ask. They are expecting you to ask, and they will help when you need it the most. The least favorite, I don't really have one, which is surprising and really good.
Thanks, Dominic.
Yeah.
Allie, I'm not sure if you've gotten your volume to work. Do you want to try it?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Great.
I'm not sure if my video's not working at the moment. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Sorry about that.
It's great to hear your voice. So give a quick introduction, and then you can share your favorite and least favorite elements of Landmark.
My name is Allie DeRujo, and I'm from Framingham, Massachusetts, and I'm a senior, and this is my 3rd year at Landmark.
And Allie, you were a boarder prior to the closure, correct?
Yes, I boarded for 2 years.
And what are some of the things you do on campus?
I'm on the soccer team and the lacrosse team. I do a lot of volunteering, and yeah, it's pretty much what I do.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, guys, students, do we have vegan food options?
Yes, we do.
Great, Dominic.
Also, if you have any dietary options or things, they'll change the menu for you if you need it.
Great. Allie, what do you think about team spirit? Do people come out to see the girls' soccer team?
Oh, for sure. Like everyone, I remember on our final, we got to the finals last year, and we got out of school early, and everyone was cheering and bells and pretty much like pom poms and signs.
My kids still talk about that event. That was a big deal. Yeah, really neat. What other questions did I miss? Dominic, you've been both a boarding student, and then after you moved, you became a day student. Which did you prefer?
I liked both. I think being a day student was a little bit easier for me. The level system was great, but sometimes boarding didn't really work for me. I still love being with my parents, still commuting, still seeing a lot of my friends. A lot of my friends were day students, so being a boarder was kind of challenging for me. But when I became a day student, I still felt that community as I was when I was a boarder.
Great. Allie, how long is your commute to be a day student right now?
It's about an hour and like 10 to 20 minutes. So in one way.
Can I ask you why you make the drive to campus knowing that you could be remote if you're interested in that?
I just think it's a better learning experience being on campus with all the teachers and like having that help.
Good. Allie, have you started thinking about college?
Yeah, I've applied to a couple right now, but it's a pretty big like application process and stuff.
Do you know what you're thinking for after Landmark?
I'm thinking about going into real estate right now.
Cool. Very neat. All right, let's see. Did I miss any other questions? What time does school start, Eric?
School starts at 7:50, which I think coming from my public school is a little bit more on the early side. But since I was a boarder, I actually got to sleep in more because, you know, you sleep at school, so you don't have any commute time. So I was able to wake up at like 7:10. And as long as I was out of the dorm by like a specific time, everything was good to go. So even though the school day started a little bit earlier, I actually got more sleep in. So I liked it.
Eric, what level were you?
I was level 5, and then I was a week away from getting level 6. And then we all went online, and I got kind of screwed over by the coronavirus, but we all did.
Next year. What are you most looking forward to being a senior and potentially level 6?
Oh, I'm looking forward. What am I looking forward about level 6? The way the level system works is level 5 and 6. There are definitely some differences, but I would consider those to be like the higher levels, and you have like the low levels. And to move up, basically every level you move up is a little bit harder to get. And once you get week 12 and 5 and 6, you kind of have these privileges, I'm going to say, where you can do more freedom. So the difference between level 5 and 6 is great, but level 5 is all I personally need at the moment. I'd love to be level 6. And I'm also looking forward to being back in the dorm, seeing everybody again in person. As being online, it's definitely better for me being online than being in public school. But being online, it does take a toll, and it'd be a lot better to like be able to see people, come in person, have teacher coverage support on homework, you know, see everyone, goof around from time to time, you know, it's fun.
Soon we hope. One more question I want to ask you guys and families. Again, any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We're all three of you 100% can't wait, so on board with Landmark. I can't see Allie's face, but I can see Eric's.
I was for sure not happy coming here at first because it's just such a far commute for me, at least, and I love just leaving all my friends behind and all that stuff, and this is a new place, new school. But as I would say, like 2 months in, like I made like tons of new friends, was on the soccer team. The teachers were really supportive and like communicated with you a lot, and it was just like a really good community feeling.
Sweet, Allie. Eric, what about you?
I wasn't like fully against it, but also wasn't fully for it, and I kind of saw it as like maybe it's a little bit of an adventure that I'm going to go on, and I think it ended up being a very fun adventure and a very good learning experience. And the way and I was a boarder, so I lived here, and I live up in northern Vermont, so I wasn't like going home every weekend like most kids do. So I stayed with some of the kids that were maybe international students, but from like the West Coast. So I also got to know them, which was nice. And I feel like it panned out. And the way I normally describe Landmark as like making friends is that it's like a summer camp that just doesn't end after 2 weeks with a little bit of learning involved. So you make those friends really quick and you have those great experiences, but you do learn a lot very quickly at the same time.
Awesome. Dominic, what would you say to a student who's on the fence about Landmark and maybe is digging their heels in a little bit?
I say it's worth it. It really changed. So I had different academic profile. So I used to live in France, and their academics was very hard and rigored, and it's not structured, but they didn't really care about the students and the teacher relationship. When I came here, it was very different. The students and the teacher had this bond, had this more family-like attitude towards learning and teaching. So having that combined with school, it really helped and progressed my level of knowledge and learning.
Awesome, guys. And thank you so much. I'm going to let you go because I know you have third period soon, but thank you for taking the time to talk about your experiences. And it's always so nice to hear from you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Allie, Dominic, and Eric.
Thank you guys for doing this for us today.
All right.
Bye.
So thank you as well to our administrators. I know you probably need to head off and get ready for third period as well. I'll turn it over back to Melody to wrap up to talk about kind of the admissions process and next steps. But thank you guys again, both our panelists and our families for taking the time to learn more about Landmark and explore this. Yeah, they are super great kids. And again, that's just voluntary. Every month the kiddos change, and it's always refreshing to hear that that positivity. They're not; these kids aren't bribed in any way. And I would say, regardless of the 3 kids we had, you hear some of those same themes of their really true happiness at Landmark, which is neat.
So a couple other questions that jumped in that I can address quickly if people are interested in. It cracks me up every time I hear Eric talk. Eric spends the summer in Germany with his family, and so when he first started these in September, he was really difficult to understand as he was transitioning from German back to English. And every month that goes by, his English is becoming more and more easy to understand. When he first arrived here, it was challenging at times to understand him as he jumped back and forth between German and English. So the question was there was a question that came in about international students. COVID has kind of impacted the international recruitment aspects of it, but typically we have between, I would say, 5 to 10 students who are internationally based. This year right now, I think our furthest student who's fully remote, we have a girl from India who's desperate to get here, who is kind of just not able to. And so, she starts school at like 7 o'clock at night and goes until midnight or 1 o'clock based on the time difference. So she's hanging in there with us. But usually we're between 5 or 10 students that are international. We have a strong intercultural club that invites and brings in all students who have an interest or an experience or an identity that is internationally based. That's a very active and very vibrant club that's continuing to meet remotely to include all of those students. And then the other question that came is how many students stay for the weekend. That is a yearly shift in numbers, depending upon where the demographics are. I would say that on a traditional weekend, we probably have about 70 students who remain. And that sounds like a lot of students then go home, but that's not necessarily the case. A number of students will even go with, Eric from Vermont would go with his roommate who lived in Massachusetts on some weekends and not necessarily go home. So roughly about 70 students out of the 150 that board here remain on campus with a very well supervised, developed weekend program with individuals. We're not a go to the mall and dump. I'm not a big fan of the mall. We are looking at utilizing Boston and all the cultural resources there, using the mountains of New Hampshire and Maine, looking at doing everything we can. So we schedule and have a very robust weekend program. And then traditionally our sports teams compete. Wednesday's a big sports day. Saturday is not. So we are usually sport competitions happen Monday through Friday. Wednesdays being the heaviest day of sports teams in a more traditional school format based on the league that we're in.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Katie, for monitoring all of that back and forth. So as Katie mentioned, I just wanted to just sum up again. Thank you for being here today. And in terms of the application process, again, please feel free to start sending in materials as you have them. You can submit stuff in a piecemeal fashion. It doesn't have to be a completed, there's that checklist of everything we need to get ultimately, but you can start sending in materials as you have them available. And our office will keep in touch with you through email about, again, what we've received, what's still outstanding. And once it is complete, we will let you know that. When we have a completed application, it's typically about a month-long process for us to do comprehensive review. We have a couple different folks in our admission office, look at every word on every page. We do follow up with folks. If your student sees a private therapist or a school counselor, there's a summary of counseling services form for them to complete. If they have a psychopharmacologist for med prescription, there's a form for them to complete. So we collect all these pieces, we do our follow-up, and then if, again, at the end of the review, we feel like we're likely to be a good fit, we'll be in touch about scheduling a screening and interview, which is happening virtually at this point because of the pandemic. So we've worked out a pretty good system to be able to do that virtual appointment and to get the information we need academically in terms of reading levels and things like that. And we go from there. So again, feel free to reach out to our office with any questions about documents that are needed, and we'll keep in touch with you. And thank you again for joining us today.